Welcome to this update from Illinois Vision 2020. In the few minutes ahead, you will learn about our recent accomplishments and hear from the 4 executive directors of the statewide School Management Alliance about our plans for Illinois Vision 2020 moving forward.
We all know that the critical component to the success of our students is highly effective educators, teachers, and principals. And so a major component of the Vision 2020 is focused on recruitment and retention of high-quality, high-impact educators. Policies that support grow your own programs starting as early as middle school and high school with students in our districts. Strengthening and expanding licensure reciprocity programs with neighboring states so that Illinois has access to the best educators available. Expanding alternative teacher licensing programs, particularly as it relates to serving our underserved districts and our children most at risk, and pools that lack available candidates. Provide student loan forgiveness, particularly for our minority teaching and leadership applicants, and to support the students most in need of high-quality educators. And last, strengthen our partnerships with higher education institutions in order to provide a clear pathway to initial licensure for our teachers. Providing professional development that is job-embedded, timely, and relevant is also a critical policy recommendation of Vision 2020. Giving districts the autonomy to develop and articulate their own professional development to support the needs of their teachers. Policies that support strong mentoring programs that are embedded not only in the districts, but also in the communities in which educators will work so that they can understand the context for student learning.
Under the 21st Century Learning pillar, we're going to be able to build off of many of the successes that Vision 2020 has experienced, be it with the new funding formula that we have, the Post-Secondary Workforce Act that was put into place, and also the dollars that have been invested into expanding broadband access across the state. And I think what's great about where we are at this point moving forward is that we're really going to be able to start getting to the things that we've wanted to all along, and that is the direct impact on our students. For example, as we look at our goals of developing the whole child, aligning and expanding social and emotional standards. We know that with what we're dealing with trauma-informed practices and helping students meet those critical needs and the impact that it has on their overall educational experience, those things are very important. Putting resources into our engagement efforts with both parents and community, making sure that we've got people and resources in place so that we can better talk with and engage with our communities overall. Ensuring that our assessment system is well balanced and is where we need to be with our new accountability system with ESSA that's now in place, ensuring that we're handling our assessments in the right way so that we are getting the data that we need to inform instructional practices, but make sure that it's appropriate in the way that we do that with our kids. Other things that are highly critical under the 21st Century Learning pillar include investing in high-quality early childhood education. Are we getting kids started on the right foot, knowing that has an eternal impact on them throughout both their K-12 school experience, but then post-secondary school experience, and then what they experience in the workforce and beyond. Additionally, we want to ensure that they receive the types of resources and experiences that are going to prepare them for college and career. With the Post-Secondary Workforce Act, Readiness Act, we wanted to give them experiences in the business community, industry, other post-secondary institutions, start that as soon as possible, be it with dual credit classes or internship experiences, co-op related experiences. It's interesting to us as we think about how there is now a re-emphasis on vocational education, something we know that has been lost through the Great Recession and the disinvestment in education. Now we can get back to those things that we know will help kids be successful after they graduate from high school. Additionally, building on what we have with broadband and the expansion of that across the state is really taking time now to look at what we can be doing with technology, personalize the learning experience for students, and ensuring that we're leveraging the resources that we have with broadband access and technology as a whole.
The third pillar of the Vision 2020 plan is known as shared accountability. And as we think about what shared accountability is, we have to think about the entire spectrum, all of the stakeholders that are involved across the education of a child from pre-K through 12th grade. First on our list was the inclusion of educators, practicing educators, on the Illinois State Board of Education. Been a long sought after goal of the Vision 2020 plan. And most recently, in fact, as November of 2018, we've successfully passed the law that allows 3 practicing educators to join the Illinois State Board of Education. Now that's key because the Illinois State Board is pivotal in policy development, in procedures, in practices, and in programs that are put upon Illinois school districts, usually starting at the beginning of each school year. But it's key to have practicing educators sit there and be able to participate in the discussions and decision-making that affects all children in Illinois. So that's a big success that's come directly out of Vision 2020. The second thing that came up in the Vision 2020 plan was to have what we call an Illinois Balanced Accountability Measure, or an Illinois Balanced Accountability Plan, whatever word you prefer to use there. The idea here was to have a system that allowed all schools across Illinois to report out to their public, report out to their stakeholders, their taxpayers, exactly the types of progress and programs that they were having for their children, so that the taxpayers, the stakeholders, the communities could all contribute to the success of the education of the child. That law has been on the books now for a couple of years, and we're thankful to have both of those measures passed under the third pillar of Vision 2020. The open item under shared accountability deals with establishing greater flexibility at the local level with all stakeholders having input. We often talk about the unfunded mandates that the state puts upon school districts to carry out with literally no funding to back them up. We look at the school code. The school code has more than doubled in the last 20 years in terms of regulatory types of issues that have passed the General Assembly and been passed down to school districts. So we're always looking for ways to provide greater flexibility to the local school district, the local stakeholders, including teachers, principals, superintendents, board members, taxpayers, all invested people from the community, having them all around a table developing what's the best plan for our local school district. So that's still open, still something that we're working on and will continue to work on in the next couple of years.
So the fourth and final pillar of Vision 2020 has to do with equitable and adequate school funding. And of course, the big challenge was to replace our old school funding formula, and we've done that through Vision 2020 with the new evidence-based funding formula that's in place today. But the work still goes on in regard to the need to enhance state funding across the board. First of all, we do need to pay attention to funding the evidence-based funding model. We have in the statute a goal that by 2027, all schools, all children would be adequately funded across the state of Illinois. We know that's a big challenge, and from the very beginning, we talked about a scalable new plan to get there. But our minimum funding plan within the model at $350 million is not going to get us to full funding by 2027. So the challenge will be to put additional dollars, more dollars each year into that model in order to reach that goal. Currently, the State Board of Education recommends somewhere around $660 million new dollars each year in order to reach that goal by 2027. And that's the equivalent of what we've seen put in the last 2 years. So we have a lot of work to do in that particular area. But we can't lose sight of other funding areas as well: transportation, special education, early childhood education. These are all pieces that are outside, in some cases, of the evidence-based funding model. In special education, we're talking about those high-cost students. And today there are facility resources available if you put a child in a private facility, but there are gaps for other kids who are served locally in regard to reimbursements for special ed. And of course, transportation can no longer be prorated. It is a fundamental part of what it takes to get kids to school and get them in those seats, and we have to be able to support that. So across the board, we want to enhance funding for schools through our Vision 2020 initiatives. We also want to address safety in schools. This is a time in our country's history where it's very important for us to be sure that when a child goes to school that they are safe and secure. And there currently aren't a lot of resources available other than drawing them from your own local resources or your evidence-based funding resources to enhance safety provisions within schools. We think things like block grants for safety might be an opportunity for us to really make a move in that particular direction and allow districts to make their own choices about what they need to do in order to secure their facilities and make their students safe. And then we need to protect local resources as well. There are still a lot of dependency on local resources across the state. Even though our Constitution might say that the state should be the primary funding entity for public education, we're a long way from getting there. So we need to watch out for various kinds of issues such as tax increment financing. Make sure that the laws are good on that and that the application at the local level is dealt with in a very, effective and pure manner, and so it doesn't hurt schools as communities look for economic development. And then also we need to protect corporate personal property replacement tax. There's been a significant amount of diminution in that fund over the years for other types of state funding needs, and that needs to stop. We need to be very conscious about protecting that for local districts going forward. And then finally, we need to take a look at the one big elephant in the room when it comes to the overall funding of the state of Illinois, and that is the growing pension obligations, the ramp from 1994 that now is in its latter years. And we have looked at plans to level that ramp, and we see that as a hinge to a door that could open resources to go into public education and meet some of the other needs that we've seen and I've talked about that are on the table here today. So those are the provisions under equitable and adequate funding. Now, Vision 2020 is a long-term plan. It's a plan to challenge legislators and the governor, as well as other stakeholders, to really make movement toward effective educational policy by 2020. It's almost here. We have several more years that we can continue to work on this. We hope you, as well as our legislative friends and the governor, will join us in making a movement toward these ends.